8 spine-chilling Home Alone horror stories, forbidden breaths in the dark revealed. In Cedar Grove, darkness hovers like a thick fog, wrapping around tired houses. Once, this was a sleepy suburb where children played and neighbors smiled. But now, a darkness deeper than the night has crept in. Sarah, a single mother and nurse, felt the weight of fear pressing against her chest as she stared at her fragile daughter Lily. It was past midnight, and while most of the neighborhood lay comfortably in their beds, Sarah remained restless, watching over Lily as each ragged breath threatened to turn into panic. The muffled wail of sirens sliced through the silence, mingling with Sarah's anxiety. Each wail echoed warnings of recent home invasions that left Cedar Grove feeling like a trap. Just a block away from her home, lives were shattered, dreams stolen. Who would dare invade the sanctity of home? Moments like these, she felt the burden of protector swell within her. Just then, her phone buzzed relentlessly. Unknown number after unknown number, a call that pulled her tighter into a web of dread. She couldn't ignore it. Every beep turned into a serrated knife in her heart, slicing away at the calm she struggled to maintain. As the clock struck midnight, Sarah glimpsed shadows swirling outside her window. Terrified, she instinctively clutched a pair of kitchen scissors. Outside, shadows morphed into a figure that made her blood run cold. The silhouette looked familiar, a neighbor she once shared smiles with, now shrouded in darkness, lurking with ominous intent. Panic surged through her, each pulse echoing the sensation of betrayal. With trembling hands, she dialed 911, only to be met with an ominous recorded message. "All lines are busy." A chill ran down her spine. Help was out of reach, and the false sense of security unwound like a frayed rope. What if true terror was not from the outside, but hidden within familiar faces? Then a scream pierced the night, a sinister sound that struck fear into Sarah's heart, the scream of another soul caught in the web of despair. The kind of realization that shattered her peaceful facade. It wasn't just a home invasion, but a nightmare brought to life. She needed to protect Lily. Fear transformed into fierce resolve. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night morphed into a maze of terror. Each step forward transformed familiar paths into treacherous trails. Memories of trust twisted into a creeping realization. This was not just random chaos. Shadows loomed larger, hiding dark secrets beneath their cover. What if the greatest danger wasn't just outside, but nestled inside the very walls she trusted? As she moved closer to the lurking figure, her breath quickened. Visions of her daughter flashed through her mind, each thought a plea. Then it happened. A second scream sliced through the thick air. Sarah's chest knotted tight. As she froze, parsing the chilling implications, a chilling question settled into her heart. What if this night unveiled horrors that turned her world inside out? As she turned to race back, the darkness seemed to close in, whispers of danger growing louder. With every thunderous beat of her heart, Sarah sprinted back to the safety of her home, feet pounding against the floorboards like a countdown to oblivion. The dim light from the hallway cast long shadows that played tricks on her mind, twisting each corner into another potential hiding place for danger. Suddenly, she heard a rustle from the kitchen, the unmistakable sound of metal scraping against ceramic.
Standing frozen for a moment, Sarah felt the cold sweat drench her palms. Was it just the wind, or had something or someone breached the sanctity of her home? Taking a silent breath, she pressed her back against the wall, her grip tightening around the kitchen scissors. She peered around the corner, half expecting to find a thief pilfering through her belongings. But as she peeked, the kitchen lay bare, illuminated by the feeble glow of the overhead light, creating an atmosphere fraught with hostilities. The sound echoed again, louder this time. Panic surged with each whisper the house seemed to take on. Was it echoing with the anger of those who once lived here? She advanced cautiously, plotting her next move. The kitchen was a stage set for horror, waiting for the moment when she'd uncover a hidden truth that could snuff out the breath from her body. At the back of her mind, thoughts of Lily clamored for her attention. Sarah rushed back to her daughter's room, fighting the rising fear that something terrible could happen if her focus wavered. She tiptoed towards the door, her heart in her throat, and opened it slowly, praying she'd find Lily sleeping peacefully. What met her gaze shattered that hope. Pillows and blankets lay strewn across the floor, but Lily was nowhere to be seen. A fresh wave of terror crashed over her, tightening her chest like a vice. "Lily!" she called out, her voice shaky, trembling with dread. Silence answered her call, a darkness that was thick and suffocating. With adrenaline surging through her veins, she spun around, scanning the room for any sign of her child. Goosebumps prickled her skin as her imagination conjuring terrifying visions. What if the shadows had taken her? With the scissors positioned tightly at her side, Sarah made a desperate choice. She must search the rest of the house. She dashed down the hallway, past the living room, where curtains flapped as if some unseen force toyed with them. Rounding the corner, she
caught a brief glimpse of movement, a fleeting shadow darting away. No, the word escaped her, barely a whisper, but it seemed to hang in the air, heavy with foreboding. Just then, a door creaked upstairs. The sound was unmistakable, a deliberate statement that something or someone was moving within her very home. She clambered up the stairs, one trembling step at a time, every creak beneath her foot seeming to laugh at her fear. Reaching the top, she hesitated, heart racing, as the sobs of a child echoed down the hallway, a haunting melody familiar enough to be painfully real. Sarah pressed on, half dragged by a force stronger than her will. Each sound seemed to mock her desperation, every sinister shadow stretching to touch her in the dimly lit passage. As she reached the cracked door of the bathroom, she pushed it open, dread flooding her senses. The light flickered perilously, revealing, mirroring, reflecting everything she feared. What awaited her behind that door could shift the very fabric of her reality. And just before she could step inside, the light went out, plunging everything into darkness. The screams she feared echoed, twisting around her like vines suffocating hope. The last sound she heard before complete darkness enveloped her was a whisper, soft but unmistakably familiar. "Help me, Mommy." What had she awakened? Was it only her nightmares, or had the true horror broken free, now fully unleashed? With a deep breath, Sarah's resolve ignited, steeling her for what came next. But now she was no longer certain if the true monster was hidden or had become her very own daughter. The darkness pressed around her, waiting, just waiting. The darkness thickened, wrapping Sarah in a shroud of uncertainty and dread. Her heart hammered in her chest, a frantic drumbeat echoing in the suffocating silence. Instinctively, she raised the scissors, its cold metal edge gleaming faintly as it caught the light from the hallway. "Lily!" Her voice was firmer this time, cutting through the quiet like a knife. But all she received was silence, a deadening silence that pressed against her ears and made her skin crawl. Then a soft whimper pierced the air, fragile and haunting, making her stomach twist. It was Lily's voice, but distant. Panic surged again as she turned toward the sound, stepping cautiously forward. Each footfall felt like a violation of the heavy air that surrounded her, as if she were intruding on something sacred and horrific. The bathroom door creaked open a fraction, revealing shadows that danced like phantoms. Each flicker of light seemed to reveal more than it concealed, teasing at the edge of her understanding. She fought the urge to scream, to flee. Instead, she moved toward the sound, breath hitching in her throat. "Mommy, help!" The voice broke her resolve, filled with an urgency that sent ice through her veins. Where could she be? Was she trapped? "I'm coming," Sarah called out, her voice trembling now. With each step, her heart thudded louder, echoing within her like a warning. Whoever or whatever was in her house felt impossibly close. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the living room, shaking the very walls around her. The sound jolted her back, fear morphing into terror. Was something breaking in, or was it already inside? With sharpened senses, Sarah retreated a step, eyes darting to the staircase. No, she couldn't leave without finding Lily. Turning on her heel, she pushed through the bathroom door, its creak sounding like a shriek of warning. The light flickered erratically, revealing the room's unsettling features. The cracked mirror reflecting not just the chaos of her surroundings, but her own frightened face, twisted in a mask of desperation. "Stay together, Sarah," she whispered to herself. The whisper throbbed with a mix of fear and bravado. "Lily?" Another call, as she scanned the room. The tub was empty. The floor, littered with old magazines, brought back vague memories of happier times, a life untouched by fear. And then, from the corner, a shadow moved. A figure, tall, slender, and utterly still. It was like a dark stain against the dim bathroom wall, morphing into something she could barely comprehend. Terror gripped her spine. "Who's there?" She leveled the scissors, hands trembling, ready for a fight. The figure stepped into the flickering light, and a gasp ripped from her throat. It wasn't a stranger, but a twisted reflection of herself from a world she couldn't see. A warped version that smiled back with eyes devoid of humanity. "Lily!" The scream tore from her lips, raw and primal. The mirage flickered out, crashing through the bounds of reality, as sound flooded back, a roar of voices overlapping, each whisper carrying a name. "Mommy! Mommy! Mommy!" The chorus grew louder, an overwhelming cacophony coupled with Lily's sobs. Frantically, Sarah stumbled back into the hallway, desperate. The walls seemed to close in, as if the house itself was alive, pressing down on her. She broke into a run, heading for the stairwell, the whispers trailing her like a dark cloud. As she turned the corner, she nearly collided with the kitchen doorway. Still holding the scissors, she spotted a movement in the corner of her eye, an unfamiliar figure standing in the shadows. Everything around her felt unreal. "Get away from her!" she screamed, her voice unrecognizable, jagged with pain. But the figure melted into nothing just as quickly as it appeared, leaving only the oppressive silence of the house and the fading echo of her daughter's cries. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah grasped the banister, twisting it until the wood creaked. She looked back desperately, knowing the darkness was already closing in around her. Time felt like a wild beast slipping through her fingers. She had to find Lily before whatever haunted this home consumed them both. But in that moment of resolve, the voice came again, closer this time and unmistakable. "Mommy, I'm right here. Please, help me." Fueled by fear and desperation, she charged down the hallway, prepared to confront whatever hell awaited her within. But as she burst into the room where she thought her daughter might be, her heart dropped. The bed was empty, the blanket rearranged as if it had been hastily tossed aside. Lily? Each dreadful minute stretched into eternity.
And then she heard the front door slam shut. What lurked outside? What waited for her on the other side? As she stood there, caught between reality and fear, the worst thought hit her. What if the darkness was not just within the house, but coming from outside, ready to swallow them whole? A cold wind whispered through the cracks near the door, and Sarah felt it grip her with icy fingers. She stood frozen, torn between crumpling into despair or plunging into action. Was her daughter outside, alone? The thought made her stomach churn. "Lily!" she shouted again, voice cracking under the weight of panic. Silence returned, heavy and oppressive. The distant echoes of laughter that had once filled this home seemed like a cruel joke now. The floor creaked under her feet, a reminder of the house's age, its history, a history she no longer felt safe inhabiting. Rushing toward the front door, she grabbed the handle, heart racing. What if she opened it? What if whatever had taken Lily was waiting for her? "Think, Sarah, you need to find her," she whispered under her breath, remembering the gleam of the scissors still clutched tightly in her hand. The blade was her only comfort now. Summoning all her courage, she flung the door open. The night air smacked her face, rancid with decay and unearthly whispers that wrapped around her like a shroud. The yard was shrouded in darkness, punctuated only by the flickering light of a street lamp far off, its glow seeming feeble against the looming shadows. "Lily!" Sarah called again, stepping out into the night. The wooden planks creaked under her weight. With each step, she felt the ground vibrating with an urgency, as if warning her to turn back. A gust of wind howled through the trees lining the property, their branches swaying like skeletal fingers scratching at the sky. But there was no sign of her daughter. "Mommy!" The voice came from the left, faint but unmistakable. It trembled and drifted on the wind, weaving through the air like an ethereal thread. "Lily!" Sarah bolted toward the sound, dread fueling her every movement. Her feet moved faster, and desperation eclipsed reason. She swiveled her head, scanning the environment for any glimpse of her girl, fear clawing at her insides like an animal. And then she saw it, a flicker of movement in the bushes at the far corner of the yard. Her breath hitched. Could it be? Was that Lily? "Hold on, sweetheart, I'm coming," she shouted, lunging forward. But as she approached, the figure darted away, slipping between the shadows. "No, no, Lily!" Panic surged. "Stay where you are, I'm right here." She plunged into the darkness after the small shape, the scissors gripped tightly, unyielding. The air thickened as she entered the brush, almost alive, pressing against her, slowing her steps. Eyes wide with
fear, she pushed aside branches and twigs, the world around her a chaotic swirl of shadows. Each snap of a twig beneath her foot echoed like thunder in her ears. And then she skidded to a halt. A massive figure loomed before her, blocking her path, a towering silhouette etched against the moonlight. Its features were twisted and unnatural, each line sharp and grotesque. "Mommy?" The voice was a warped echo, mocking. "Get away from her!" Sarah screamed, thrusting the scissors forward, heart pounding louder than ever. But the figure didn't move. Instead, it laughed, a guttural, chilling sound that wrapped around her mind like a noose. "You're too late!" As she stood paralyzed, dread clenched her chest. Behind the figure, she glimpsed the rustle of something small, a flash of blonde hair. "Lily!" she cried, a surge of sobbing adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Please, no!" Without thinking, she charged at the silhouette, determined to break through whatever barrier lay between her and her daughter. But as she surged forward, the world shifted. The darkness expanded, swallowing her whole. And then it released her, casting her forward into the abyss. The figure and the sound of Lily vanished into the night, leaving only emptiness behind. "Mommy, help," echoed once more, eerily distant, filling Sarah with dread and despair. She was losing her too. Desperation clawed at her throat. She couldn't surrender to this shadow. But as she turned to retreat back to the house, the ground shifted beneath her feet, and she stumbled, falling to her knees. Something brushed against her back, something cold and unyielding. Before she could turn, she felt a breath, chilled with an ancient malice, whisper close to her ear. "You shouldn't have come here." In that moment of sheer terror, clarity pierced through. What if she couldn't save Lily? What if the darkness had already claimed them both? So many questions, too many unanswered fears. But as she looked up, cheeks wet with tears, the door to her home loomed behind her, closed tightly, between her and the unknown. Was it truly safe, or a trap waiting to ensnare her further? The night deepened, and as Sarah hesitated, she understood one terrible truth. The darkness wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was alive and hungry. What awaited her within? Did she dare confront it? Panic surged inside Sarah, the adrenaline pulsing through her veins like thunder. She could hear the soft sound of her breath mingling with the unsettling silence surrounding her. The cold dread coiled tighter, squeezing down on her chest as she forced herself to peer back through the door she came from. The darkness inside the house seemed to beckon her, the touch of the chill behind her still fresh. But where was Lily? A sudden desire flickered inside her. She needed to go back. What if her daughter, wherever she was, would not be able to find her way back? But even as she thought it, the words, "You shouldn't have come here," echoed cruelly in her mind. Sarah shuddered, thoughts scrambling as she glanced around. The twisted silhouette had vanished along with her child. Panic drowned logic, splashing into terrifying conclusions that fortified the fear creeping along her spine. There was something malevolent lurking just beyond the trees, waiting, watching. With trembling fingers, she clutched the scissors tighter, grounding herself with their cold steel. "Get it together, Sarah," she whispered fiercely. "You need to find Lily." Courage warred with terror inside her. She had already felt the darkness whispering with its breath, cold against her skin, ready to consume. But she couldn't succumb. She wouldn't let it win. "Lily!" she called again, forcing her voice to not quake, though the edges of her fear slipped through, audible in the breeze. "I'm right here. Come to me." A rustling in the bushes made her heart leap into her throat. "Over there!" She dashed toward the sound, shoulders squared, but the brush snapped underfoot like a warning, urging her to reconsider. Shaking with dread, she pushed through the foliage, her breath hitching with each shaky step. A low growl echoed from behind her, pulling her gaze back. It was deep, reverberating through the ground, vibrating through her bones. Before she could think, Sarah turned, gripping the scissors before her. The moonlight caught something shimmering in the underbrush. A small, glimmering trinket lay just within reach, catching her eye. A memory flickered, Lily's favorite charm bracelet. "No!" she gasped, darting forward, heart hammering against her ribs. What did it mean? Suddenly, from the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes blinked to life, staring right at her. They were impossibly still, penetrating the darkness like a knife. A small whimper echoed from behind them, guttural and strained. The weight of despair crashed down around her. It was her daughter's voice. "Mommy, please!" "Lily, I'm coming!" Sarah shrieked, flinging the charm bracelet aside, adrenaline pushing her deeper into the shadows. As she scrambled forward, the eyes remained still, never breaking their gaze. She felt the earth tremble, a warning, the very ground seemingly alive and shifting beneath her feet, desperate to ensnare her. "Stay away from her," she shouted, feeling both feral and terrified,
her resolve hardening. As she drew closer, a monstrous form began to emerge from the dark. "Mommy!" It was weak, frail, followed by a series of frantic rustles. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized the creature. Was it protecting her daughter? She struck out with the scissors, instinct taking over as her fear crystallized into fury. "Let her go!" The twisted figure roared in response, its voice a cacophony of anguish and laughter that filled the space around her with dread. Then Lily's voice cut through, tinged with desperation. "Mommy, help me!" Her heart twisted painfully in her chest. Time warped as a sense of hopelessness buried her deeper into despair. "Lily, hold on!" With that, she leapt forward into the darkness, determined to shield her daughter from whatever evil had taken root in this place. But just as she felt her fingertips brush against the warmth,
her child's skin, darkness surged forth, engulfing the air around her, pulling her back into the sprawling shadows. Cold laughter echoed in her mind as reality splintered, dragging her deeper into a world she couldn't escape. Had she lost Lily forever? Yet, behind the laughter, echoed an unusual sound. Was that the faint chime of a bell? What did it mean? Despair and determination clashed in Sarah as she realized she hadn't given up yet. But the answer awaited in the heart of the darkness. Would she venture further or retreat to whatever horrors lay in the old house? Sarah pushed through the shadows, the weight of the world pressing against her. The chilling laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that enveloped her like a suffocating blanket. The darkness shifted, murmuring secrets she could barely understand. She strained her ears, heart pounding, as the eerie chime lingered like a ghostly whisper. "Lily?" she called again, voice frayed and quiet, swallowed by the thick air. Fear twisted inside her gut, and each moment felt like an eternity. Would her daughter still be there? Could it be a trap, luring her into the dark? She moved deeper, the ground soft and yielding, each step like walking on a grave. The scent of damp earth filled her lungs, mixing with an odor that was sharp and rotten, putting her on edge. She held the scissors tightly, knuckles white, eyes darting around, searching for her little girl. "Stay close to me," she murmured, though she knew it would not reach Lily if she were here. The dread gnawed at her resolve. Suddenly, another rustle broke through the stillness. A stick snapped. "Lily!" She propelled herself forward, but something crashed through the branches, a burst of movement that made her shiver. Shadows danced wildly, blurring shapes, challenging her senses. "Come on, please." She darted ahead, mind racing. The faint chime came again, clearer now, guiding her like a beacon. But as she pursued the sound, the surroundings seemed to warp. The trees twisted grotesquely, branches reaching out like skeletal hands. And then she saw it, a flickering light in the distance. Real or an illusion? Hope flared momentarily before the shadows clawed at her heart, seeping dread into her veins. She kept moving, each footfall more uncertain than the last. "Mommy." The soft, fragile voice seeped into her consciousness, so delicate it made her blood run cold. It was Lily! Lily! She bolted forward, desperation coating her voice as she pushed through the branches. They snagged her clothes, like hands trying to drag her back, but she fought against them. The light beckoned, flickering like her shaky hope. As she stumbled into a small clearing, she froze. A circle of pale light surrounded a small, ornate music box sitting on the ground. It was battered and old, chipped at the edges, but strangely, it hummed with magic. The chime rang out again, more insistent, echoing the voice of her daughter. "Mommy! Lily!" Sarah cried out, spinning in circles, searching for her child. But the clearing was empty, save for the box, which started to play a haunting tune. As the chilling melody wrapped around her like a ghostly embrace, the shadows shifted around her. They started to coalesce, forming shapes, figures that resembled lost souls, twisted in eternal suffering. The music continued, but she felt it, a shift in the atmosphere. The figures drew closer, their distorted faces pressed into something resembling a smile, but it was not one of warmth. It was an invitation to the depths of the unknown. "Lily!" Panic ignited in her chest as she crouched before the box, instinctively reaching for it. What if it held the key to this nightmare? What if it led her to Lily, or worse, trapped her forever? As her fingers grazed the cool surface, a violent wind rattled through the clearing, uprooting the trees. The laughter returned, louder now, surrounding her, drowning out everything else. Desperation clawed at her throat. Unseen forces pulled her away from the music box, dragging her toward the darkness once more. The helpless shriek of her daughter echoed in her ears, and in that moment Sarah realized she might be too late. But then the chiming grew louder, merging with a warning, an ultimatum. "Find me before it's too late." As the landscape around her warped into chaos, she gritted her teeth. There was no turning back now. Would she uncover the truth behind the music box, or surrender her daughter to the wrath of the darkness? With the stakes higher than ever, she took a deep breath and stepped forward into the shadow, her heart pounding, a maze of fear and determination waiting to ensnare her. The wind howled as Sarah plunged deeper into the shadows, the music box's haunting melody echoing in her mind. She fought against the invisible grip pulling her away, her heart racing, not just from fear, but a primal sense of urgency. The chill that enveloped her felt alive, wrapping around her throat like a noose, squeezing as the blackness threatened to swallow her whole. "Find me before it's too late," she whispered the words to herself, a desperate mantra. Lily's voice rang out again, clearer now, laced with panic. "Mommy, help me!" A fresh wave of adrenaline coursed through her veins. She clawed at fleeting shapes that darted across her peripheral vision, whispers slithering into her ears, each one a promise of despair. There was something else here, something waiting. The air grew heavier, pressing down like a weight that threatened to crush her spirit. "Lily!" she yelled again, but the only reply was the mocking laughter that melted into the darkness. Then the music shifted, a subtle change that made her blood run cold. The once sweet notes twisted, garbled into something sinister. She fought against the urgency pulling her forward, a part of her screaming to turn back. But she couldn't. She had to find Lily. Sarah pressed onward, her breath ragged. Echoes of the music began to warp into something darker, wrapping around her mind like vines tightening around a tree. Shadows flickered and twirled, grotesque visages forming and dissolving, each face contorting in a silent scream. Then it stopped. A deafening silence enveloped her, cutting through the air with sharp precision. The sudden absence of sound made her skin prickle with dread. She hesitated, caught between longing for the music that had taunted her and the oppressive promise of what lay beyond. "Lily?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, quaking. And then a rustle. She turned, instinctual fear igniting in her chest. An outline emerged, shifting within the shadows, and as it approached, her heart sank. It was a figure, but it twisted into shapes that made her want to scream. No, it couldn't be. "Mommy!" The voice was agonized, pained. It clawed at her insides, and her eyes widened in dread. "Lily!" She dove forward, desperately reaching for the flickering form, but it lurched back, melting into the darkness again. "Mommy, help me!" It sounded different now. The once sweet voice no longer belonged to her daughter, but something mocking her, warping the words into a twisted version of love. Panic clawed through Sarah's chest. This wasn't right. This was a deception, a cruel game, played by malevolent forces that sought her despair. The music box, it had to have the answer. She stumbled back, searching for it, her hands trembling. But the clearing had changed, transforming into a maze of jagged trees, their branches reaching like talons, clawing at her as she moved. The wind roared again, a beast unleashed, and the sound of her daughter's voice warped, fading in and out, the urgency tinged with something sinister. "Mommy, I'm scared!" In those chilling words, Sarah felt the veil of reality tear. A shimmer broke through, illuminating a path, a shred of hope amid the chaos. But could she trust it? The shadows around her pulsed with malevolence, begging her to come closer, whispering of despair and darkness. With every ounce of strength, she took a step toward the light. But the shadows shifted again. Figures began to emerge, each one more horrid than the last, their mouths moving in silent screams. Would she fall prey to their torment, or would she find her daughter in time? The music box's eerie tune echoed, the final echoes fading into the darkness, followed by a single sob. "Help!" And just as she felt herself drawn toward the clearing light, panic surged. What if she was too late? She knew she had to move, to act. But would the music box lead her to salvation or doom? As icy fingers gripped her heart, Sarah had no choice but to charge forward, determined to face whatever terror awaited her in the void. The air electrified around Sarah, shock coursing through her veins like poisoned fire. Lurching forward, she squinted against the thick darkness, her heart beating a frantic rhythm in her chest. Each step felt like a descent into a chasm, deeper and deeper, as if the ground beneath her would crumble away at any moment.
"Lily!" she called again, her voice wavering. Her breath came in harsh gasps, each one outlining the weight of the silence around her. It was mocking, taunting her desperate cries. But one thought remained. She had to keep moving. The flicker of light ahead seemed to beckon her, a pull stronger than the suffocating shadows. As she cleared the maze of trees, she stumbled into a clearing. It was illuminated faintly, an unnatural glow that illuminated just enough to reveal a cracked stone pedestal at its center. Gripping the edge of her shirt, she scanned the area, assessing the shadows that hid beneath the trees. Were they still watching? The swirling darkness felt alive, as if sentient and aware of her being. Her eyes flickered back to the pedestal. Resting there was the music box, gleaming ominously as if it had been waiting for her return. Hesitating only for a moment, she rushed to it, every instinct screaming that this was her way forward. She snatched the box and cradled it against her chest, hoping its ghostly melody would guide her, tether her to the world she fought to keep. "Find me before it's too late," the words whispered through her memory, urging her to open the box. With shaky hands, she flipped it open. The lid creaked as the tiny dancer began to twirl, her movements smooth yet disjointed. The notes started softly, but a chilling harmony emerged, wrapping around her soul like a vice. Suddenly, a shadow shifted behind her, cold breath brushing against the nape of her neck. Fear gripped her heart. She spun on her heels, but there was nothing, just the emptiness of the clearing and lingering whispers that seeped through the trees. She exhaled sharply. "This is a nightmare," she muttered to herself. But the box continued, the tune warping into a haunting melody that echoed through her core, pulling at long-buried memories. The figures from the shadows loomed closer, their hollow eyes fixed on her. She felt the icy pang of dread. It was only a matter of time before they would strike. "Lily!" she cried out again, desperation piercing her every word. The chilling wind responded, whispering promises, beckoning her to give in to despair. She clenched the music box tighter, trying to stave off the encroaching darkness. Then the melody shifted yet again, and she understood, truly understood. What she had been hearing wasn't just music, it was a warning. Each note held a fragment of truth, piecing together the chaos surrounding her. And just then, the shadows shimmered and split. A figure emerged, and this time, she didn't want to scream. It wasn't grotesque or monstrous. It looked like Lily, but the face twisted into a sickening mockery of familiarity. "Mommy, I'm here," it crooned, voice dripping with an unsettling sweetness. "No, you're not my Lily!" Panic surged as she realized she stood at the precipice of a dark revelation, one she could no longer ignore. Before she could act, the spectral figure lunged. Sarah braced herself, heart pounding.
As another set of shadows flanked the first, each a twisted visage of the life she once knew. But somewhere, a soft, real sob cut through the cacophony. "Help me, please." It was faint, but unmistakable. Sarah's instincts kicked in without warning. She dashed past the mocking image, driven by the haunting plea that pulled at her heart. The shadows snarled, closing in around her, teeth sharp and eyes glowing hunger. Frantically, she sprinted toward where she felt the sound coming from. The music box thumped in her hands, teetering on the edge of chaos. As Sarah pushed through the tree line, a blinding light appeared before her, erasing the shadows. Just beyond, she could see a figure crouched low, tiny fingers grasping at the ground, trembling. "Lily!" she cried, relief crashing into her body like a wave. But as she reached out, everything screamed in silence. The shadows writhed, and the light flickered. Was this about to end in reality or something darker? In that moment of uncertainty, one whisper cut through the chaos. "Let the music guide you." Did she dare to trust it? The pulse within her quickened, and anxiety filled the air. What would she sacrifice to save her daughter? The light dimmed, fading as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Sarah in a disoriented blur. The shadowy figures closed in, their elongated limbs stretching toward her, mouths agape in silent screams. The familiar shape, barely 10 feet away, was lost in that suffocating darkness. Her daughter. "Lily!" she cried out again, her voice cracking. The twisted visage that had mimicked her daughter was gone, but the shadows still danced around her, their presence palpable, leaching the warmth from the air, from her heart. She could feel their breath, cold and evil, brushing against her skin like an icy hand. With a surge of frantic resolve, she clutched the music box tighter, feeling its weight, a warped anchor in the storm of despair swirling around her. "What do I do?" she whispered, her voice barely escaping her lips. The melody echoed softly, each note pulling her back toward that dance of light, that tug at her heartstrings, urging her to listen. She remembered the words, "Let the music guide you." They echoed in her mind, but doubts slithered around her resolve. Could she trust this cursed thing? Just then, a low growl erupted from behind her, the shadows morphing and twisting into monstrous shapes. She could almost see their cruel, soulless eyes staring at her. Panic gripped her again. "No!" she screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Without thinking, Sarah turned the lid of the music box as she had seen in a movie long ago. The dancer continued to twirl, but this time the music punctuated the frantic atmosphere like a heartbeat, setting a rhythm that countered the chaos. "Stop!" she shouted, driven by fear and defiance. "Leave me alone!" To her dismay, the shadows shivered, hesitating as if taken aback. Their growls turned into whispers, unintelligible yet layered. The truth hung just beyond her grasp, a flicker of understanding, but she was still tied to the melody, entwined by its spell. An idea sparked in her mind, daring her to act. Maybe if she could connect the voices in the shadows to the music, she could break the curse. "Lily, follow my voice!" she yelled, desperately trying to drown out the cacophony around her. She focused on the music, amplifying its haunting melody in her mind, hoping that somewhere beneath the layers of darkness her daughter could hear her. But that ashen silhouette was still crouched amidst the trees, little fingers grasping at air. The reflectiveness in its eyes looked back at her like pools of sorrow. "Please, Mommy," it whispered, and Sarah felt every layer of fear peel away, replacing shock with a flicker of hope. With trembling hands, she opened the box wider, allowing the melody to swell into a crescendo that mixed with her heartbeat. "Lily, you have to come to me!" And then, a flicker, movement amid the shadows. Something broke free from the suffocating darkness, sprinting toward her. Was it her daughter? The whispering shapes writhed in fury, hissing as the light began pulsating around Sarah, intensifying with every note. The figure approached. It was smaller, frail. "Mommy," it cried out again, and in that moment Sarah's heart thundered wildly. But then a deep rumble split the air. The shadows jerked violently, screeching as if in pain. They recoiled and blurred away from the advancing light. "Lily!" Sarah cried, reaching out. But just as she felt something warm brush against her hand, the music box flickered, the delicate melody creaking haltingly, shuddering under the pressure. The shadows began to swirl, coalescing back together with terrifying urgency. The moment unraveled, slipping through her fingers like sand. Lily's shape was obscured now, lost to the encroaching black. Panic surged anew, sharper than before, as black tendrils snaked around Sarah, pulling her back. "No!" she shouted, fighting against the grasping darkness. The music box sputtered, the music dying to a breathless silence, and Sarah felt as though the ground had given way beneath her. Desperate, she spotted the pedestal. The stone seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. "Trust the music," she heard echo in her thoughts, and with her remaining strength she hurled the box toward it. The moment it touched the pedestal, a brilliant light exploded, echoing her scream. Then, silence. Total stillness enveloped her. Had she lost everything? Was her daughter still there? Or were the shadows finally victorious? As darkness loomed once more, a cold whisper echoed through the air, eerie and low. "What have you done?" Sarah held her breath, terror coiling tightly within her. What awaited her in the void? And, through the silence, a familiar laugh began to twinkle. A child's laugh, innocent yet unsettling. "Mommy, come play." Just a few feet away, the shadows twitched and quivered, eager and hungry once again. What was she willing? To face, to break the grip of this encroaching darkness? The darkness screamed, a roar torn from the depths of anguish that blended with the laughter of a child. Panic raced through Sarah, a feral instinct clawing at her heart. "Lily!" she cried, desperation thick in her throat. She had to find her daughter, had to break through this veil of shadow. As the echoes of that innocent laugh reverberated through the air, shadows twisted and morphed into grotesque shapes, writhing around her like serpents. They beckoned with cold fingers, teasing her resolve, but she pushed forward, heart pounding. Cold wind swirled around her, biting at her skin. Was Lily just beyond those roiling shadows? Each step felt like wading through a swamp. Time was running out. "Don't let them trick you," she forced herself to shout, gripping her scissors tightly, heart hammering wildly. The laughter faded, replaced by a chilling silence. "Mommy?" The voice was frail, but undeniably her daughter's, filled with dread and longing. Sarah surged forward, propelled by the sound. The shadows flinched as she advanced, as if they were sentient, struggling to grasp her in their trappings. She could see a flicker of movement, a small figure just beyond the chaos. "Hold on, Lily, I'm coming!" She charged toward the light, knowing she had to reach her before the darkness consumed them both. But the shadows recoiled, enveloping her energy with a shudder, forcing her to confront her deepest fears. "You cannot save what you cannot see," they jeered, voices overlapping in a sinister harmony, wrapping around her like chains. "I won't let you take her," Sarah shouted defiantly, fueled by a desperate hope that lit a fire in her belly. She pushed through, heart racing as she drew closer. In the distance, she saw her daughter's silhouette, fragile and frightened. "Lily!" With every ounce of strength, she dashed forward, breaking through the wall of shadows wrapping around her like a vicious embrace. The light surged ahead of her, illuminating a fractured image of the music box, still resting on the pedestal, but shattered now, its haunting melody silenced. "Mommy, please help me," Lily cried, eyes wide and terrified, her small frame shivering as more shadows haunted the fringes. In that agonizing moment, Sarah felt the pull of the shadows in the air, threatening to snatch away everything. "I'm here, baby, just hold on." She reached for Lily, but the distance seemed to stretch infinitely, creating a chasm of unreachable pain. Gathering her courage, she hurled herself toward the light, screaming, "No more!" The shadows shrieked in response, bursting apart as she collided fully into the warmth of her daughter's embrace, holding her tight to shield from the darkness. The world spun, light crackling at the edges, and as she squeezed her eyes shut, a fierce wind erupted. Shadows kept advancing, but Sarah squeezed Lily to her chest, an anchor in the storm. "We have to push through, sweetheart. Just hold my hands." Each breath they took became a shield, a barrier against the consuming black. As they stood, united, the air thrummed with power. A new melody began, a soft and pure sound that enveloped them, far deeper and more potent than the previous haunting notes from the music box. The shadows paused, flickering uncertainly. "What is this?" they hissed, their faces contorted with rage. "I will not let you take her," Sarah shouted, energy coursing through her veins. "Go back to where you came from." With a final push, she thrust her arms forward with Lily safely in her grasp. The warm light surged, shimmering like sunlight breaking through a storm. In an instant, the shadows recoiled, screeching and curling away from the brilliant radiance. And as the oppressive darkness began to evaporate, like smoke dispersing into the breeze, reality solidified around them. Sarah blinked as the world came back into focus. She stood in her living room, knuckles white from gripping Lily. The shadows had dissipated, leaving only echoes behind. Silence hung heavy in the air, but it felt final, safe. "Mommy," Lily murmured, burying her head against Sarah's shoulder. Relief flooded through Sarah as she tightly embraced her daughter, feeling the warmth of her small body, the soft rise and fall of each breath. "Shh, it's okay. I've got you," she whispered, tears spilling from her eyes. "You're safe now." And in that moment, as the early rays of dawn crept through the window, illuminating their faces, Sarah understood what she had fought against: darkness, despair, and the fear that threatened to tear them apart. But somehow, together, they had faced the nightmare. As they held each other, Sarah felt a shift. The shadows were gone, but lessons lingered. Familiar laughter from neighbors rang outside, warm and inviting. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah breathed deeply. Each inhale a reminder of life, of love, of hope. "Let's go outside, sweetheart," she said, standing and taking Lily's hand. Together they stepped into the morning light, leaving the horrors of the night behind, ready to embrace a new beginning, knowing the past would always be a part of them, but never again a prison. Now it was time for a fresh start. Subscribe immediately to stay updated with our next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flub the comment section with your reactions and theories about this heart-stopping ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who really need to see this conclusion. True fans understand how important it is to support the channel through these actions.